Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We are back at Sky. We've got Doogie, we've got Mikey, and today we are looking at transfers your club should be avoiding this summer. But before we get into it, how are you two?
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm not too bad. Not too bad.
Have you been on a show since you were in Germany?
I have, yeah. Was it like last Sunday
week,
Vibes
yeah.
and Monday Vibes? Or was I on? Yeah, I can't, yeah, I was. Yeah, I was. Yeah. Yeah, of course, because we were talking about the England Slovakia game. So yeah, I have been on, but you've not been on since Ibiza.
No,
how was that?
Yeah, it was great, man. It was really good. And I've just kind of twigged after asking you the Germany question there. This show's going to go out after the England result.
Yeah.
So you guys at home will know whether or not England went through or went home, and whether or not we're happy or sad right now. But either way, we're not here to talk about the Euros, really, are we? Doogie, how are you, man? Anything
I'm all
to add?
good. No, excited for the Euros kicking off this weekend, particularly the Spain-Germany game. I think that's going to be absolutely spectacular at 5 p.m. But yeah, let's get stuck into some transfers.
Yeah, absolutely. So one player that clubs should avoid. Does anybody want to start?
Going straight in.
I don't mind.
It's more one transfer, isn't it?
Transfer,
so it's like it could be contextualised around a number of different factors, really. Maybe it's cash, maybe it's positioning, maybe it's how they would fit amongst the unit.
Various factors. My first one is a move that feels like it's actually already cooling off by the time we are recording this, but it has been talked about. So I do think it's worth discussing. Jaden Philogene to Barcelona.
What's gone on there?
We've talked about it.
It's not happening though, is it?
It's not happening now. I think he's more likely to get a Premier League move. Apparently Palace are looking at him. Apparently Everton are looking at him. Although, Everton have signed Ndiaye this week as well from Marseille, which I think is a pretty smart pickup given his performances in the Championship for Sheffield United the year before last. But Philogene's a really interesting one. Florian Plettenberg, a pretty reliable source, obviously Sky Germany's head transfer guru, was suggesting that Hansi Flick really likes the look of him, which I thought was super random, to be totally honest. I mean, he did have an excellent 23-24 with Hull City in the Championship, finished with 12 goals and 6 assists in 33 appearances. But this is a player that was his only really full senior year. He was at Aston Villa prior to that. I think he only made 6 appearances for the club. Last year at Hull, I thought was solid, but not spectacular in any sort of asset, really. In terms of his Championship rankings, he was, 32nd for chances created. He was 52nd for passes into the box. 6 players took more shots. It wasn't a remarkable Championship year, and it didn't feel like the sort of Championship year that should get you a move to Barcelona. The thing that interested me on this was Barcelona probably do need to shop in more creative places in the future. The fee was only between 16 and 19 million pounds, which I didn't think was crazy. But it just feels like, do you sell Rafinha this summer, which feels kind of likely if Barcelona want to make headway in terms of their financial regularities, and then bring in Philogene? It would have been a huge risk. Is he better than Ansu Fati, who they're looking to sign permanently? Is he better than Lamine Yamal? No, he's just not at that level just yet. So I thought it was a strange transfer link, and I was surprised that someone with such a solid reputation as Plettenberg was suggesting that they were interested, which does seem to suggest that Hansi Flick was generally considering this as a move. It feels like it's cooled off now. I'd love to see him get a Premier League move, actually, and climb the ladder a bit slower, because you imagine a 22-year-old who's gone from Hull to Barcelona in front of a brand spanking new Nou Camp next year, 100,000 people watching you on a weekly basis. The pressure, that would be a lot.
It's huge.
That would be huge.
And he had injury issues last year as well, didn't he? But I think you're right that like Barcelona do need to be more creative. Like they seem to be throwing all their eggs in the Nico Williams basket right now, which is completely fair enough. Especially given that the profile that he's gained from his performances at the Euros, but. Nico Williams comes with a huge wage demand. Like he's, only 21. We're still yet to see him do kind of 2-3 seasons at the level that he's, potentially going to get to, and costs a lot more than someone like Philogene. So in some ways, the kind of price point that Philogene would be, it would come at, is the kind of price point that Barcelona need to be, aiming for with almost all their signings, even attacking signings, to be honest, because otherwise it's just not sustainable, and they're going to just keep on having this kind of squad turnover issue where they've got to sell so many players each summer. I can't really remember the last year in which Barcelona had a really settled squad that had actually played together for like more than a starting lineup at least that was more than a season old, really. So I do kind of see the logic there. You talk about Rafinha. I think Rafinha had only had 1 or max 2 years of Premier League experience.
But played well for Rennes before that.
Did play well for Rennes, but I don't think he'd been at Rennes for an awful long time.
Yeah,
had
like
he?
a year
Maybe
and a
a
half.
I think he had put up double digits in terms of goals in the Premier League, though, hadn't they?
He had. But I also wouldn't put it past Philogene to be able to do that if he was to move to the Premier League this year. And I think part of what Barcelona really need to do to be sustainable in the long run is to get ahead of the curve. Like I know, the reputation that comes, that club has, and the kind of signings that fans demand, and the need to be proven. But the reality is that I don't think Barcelona can afford to wait 2-3 years for players to build up that reputation.
And I think
I think
as
some
well,
ways,
it's like
you look at the La Masia products who have come in. If you're willing to take a chance, I know they're exceptional talents. Like, don't get me wrong, like Lamine Yamal, ridiculous. But like, if you're willing to get Kubasi in there at 17 years old, like then why not take a chance on a relatively cheap young player out of a very competitive league? Who will probably be able to match up to the physical demands of La Liga.
And we've seen Championship players in recent seasons, particularly in the last 2 seasons actually, prove that the stepping stone between that level and one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, top 7 leagues in the case of Victor Gyökeres, really isn't as large of a chasm as it has been in the past. Players have seemingly gone in there, waltzed into the first team and gone, yeah, I'm easily good enough to play at this level. Adam Wharton, I think, case in point, has gone from being Blackburn central midfielder to immediately one of the better defensive midfielders in the Premier League in the space of 6 months.
I do think they're helped by the environment, though. It's one thing doing that at Crystal Palace or Morgan Rogers at Aston Villa. Completely different story at Barcelona.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. And even Victor Gyökeres at Sporting, maybe a closer sort of comparison because he's going on to the continent. But even there, he is a more established name. He's older. He's more physical. He had proven himself a number of times in the Championship. It wasn't just a flash in the pan. And I think Philogene, let's be honest, is not going to join Barcelona. No. He's probably going to go to an Everton or a Crystal Palace. And either way, that just proves yet again the breeding ground of the Championship right now is one of the places to shop in Europe.
For sure.
One of the cheap places to shop in Europe where clubs are scrambling because of PSR issues. They need cash badly because of how the Premier League funding is laid out. I think it's pretty smart business, although Barcelona probably aren't going to do this deal.
Palace seems like a great fit for him, doesn't it? With Elise having left.
And it feels like a natural leaving.
Yeah, seems like a natural replacement there.
Absolutely. Who are you going for, Mike?
I'm going to start with a bit of a big hitter here.
Okay.
Go on.
And it's not to throw shade on the player himself. I mean, not that we're really throwing shade on any of these players, I don't expect. But Jared Branthwaite to Man United, which was a move that I did not mind at all when it first came out, especially given the kind of price that Man United were going in for him with. But post that PSR cut-off, it does feel like a slightly different situation now, getting players out of clubs that had or continue to have PSR issues. I just don't think United's initial bid of £35 million was pretty much laughed off by Everton, and now it's telling that United look far more interested in Matthijs de Ligt, who's coming at a far better price. If Branthwaite is to cost £70 million, then I just don't think it's worth it for United in this market.
So you'd avoid Branthwaite?
I would.
At that cost?
I definitely avoid Branthwaite at that cost. I think if you've got de Ligt, who is potentially interested and Bayern are willing to sell him for £42.5 million, I just think it's a no-brainer. And I think the right side of the defence is where United need to invest. I mean, really, United need to invest ideally in 2 centre-backs this summer, unless they are willing to extend the contracts of 2 of Maguire, Lindelof and Camboire. I completely back it with Camboire. I'd probably back it with Maguire as well, but it feels like Lindelof, his time at the club is nearing an end. But United need at least 1 centre back, and I just think Branthwaite at that price, it just feels like the kind of price which may come down in years to come. I'm just not. He clearly is a star in the making, right? But the kind of budget that United are working with this summer, you can get someone who is a proven star, who is still only 24, turns 25 in August, or you pay, nearly double that for someone who is, has not proven himself on the biggest stage yet, clearly has amazing raw ability, like was part of one of the best defences in England last year, and, one day will be one of the top defenders in the league. Well, actually, he was one of my favourite defenders in the league last year anyway, but first of all, is left-sided where Lisandro Martinez plays. So yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me to especially to go for two centre-backs in this market. And also, it's just like, I think, you mentioned the Ndiaye deal there. It does feel like Everton are slowly getting a bit smarter in the market. Like,
they had to.
Yeah, but Irugbunham from Villa as well. Like, I think he's a really smart pickup as well. It does feel like Everton are targeting younger players, and it does feel like they will probably sell Branthwaite at some point in the next 2 years at the right price. But I think for United to go hard on him, especially this early in the window, like it just doesn't feel right. If De Ligt's available, I think you just go for it. Like on the other on the flip side from Everton, Bayern Munich are going through like probably their like dumbest period in their modern history in terms of their transfer business, like targeting older players, selling younger players, like they're getting rid of De Ligt for Tar, who's had a great season but is 4 years older than him
in a different
system, and they're going to pay maybe 10 million euros less or 20 million euros less than what they would sell De Ligt for. Bringing in João Palhinha, who obviously like brilliant defensive midfielder, but like how many years does he have at the top level left? We're not really sure. It just feels like Bayern's transfer business continues to be a little bit mudded, and it's about time that Man United did what other clubs have done to Man United and take advantage of what is a fairly dysfunctional kind of transfer department at this moment in time. And I just think De Ligt's brilliant.
I like the De Ligt deal. I really like the De Ligt deal
Mm-hmm.
for the value you're getting, even if it is 50 million euros. I've seen some reports less than that, some slightly more, but let's say it's around 50 million euros. That as a market opportunity, when I think he's a great player, by the way, Max Kilman, really good player, has just joined West Ham for 45 million pounds, a similar sort of fee to the Matthias De Ligt deal. I think for United, who have classically been absolutely hammered in terms of costing on every signing they make, De Ligt at 24, even off the back of a fairly poor season. I think a large majority of that has to sit on the shoulders of Thomas Tuchel, to be honest with you. Don't think he particularly got the best out of Matthias De Ligt, and I certainly think his use of Eric Dyer over De Ligt towards the back end of the campaign started to become a little bit questionable. Like I do like Eric Dyer, but not one for the future of Bayern, is he? And it felt like it was a bit of a stopgap in the first place. And why was Eric Dyer getting those minutes when De Ligt, as he does have drawbacks, but certainly in terms of his leadership in the back line, I think particularly was it the first Arsenal game when De Ligt wasn't available? Like, I definitely felt like they missed him when Kim played against, was it Madrid? I think Kim played against Madrid.
Yeah, when he got absolutely done by Vinicius.
Torn apart by Vinicius. It was like, I think they probably should have just played De Ligt here. I can't remember if he was injured or what, but for me that seems like a no-brainer.
That was another thing
transfer.
last season as well. Lots of people are criticising it on Twitter, saying, look, he wasn't a regular at Bayern. He also picked up a few annoying injuries, quite small injuries, particularly in the first half of last season. By January, they brought in Eric Dyer to improve communication back there, and he never really got back in the side. But I'm kind of with Mikey and both of you, really. Not playing for Bayern last season, being sold by Bayern potentially this summer doesn't mean you're a bad player. They've made so many countless mistakes in the market in the last 12 months.
Yeah, and people hammer his time at Juventus as well. I think if you look back to that final season at Juventus, he put up the most minutes of any outfield player. He's the most trusted player. He was playing across managers, again, a little bit like his Bayern Munich time, where he really didn't have that consistent face in the dugout, whether it was Maurizio Sarri, whether it was Andrea Pirlo. Like, the lack of consistency at Bayern, then Nagelsmann and Thomas Tuchel, who didn't really trust him. I think he probably, and part of the reason that he has asked for a period of exclusivity for United reportedly, is because he wants to go and work with a manager he knows he can trust in the form of Erik ten Hag, who, fingers crossed that holds. And it's not like 3 months of disaster and Ten Hag's out the door. But I think the contract extension lends weight to De Ligt joining the club.
And there's a reason why Bayern paid the money that they did for De Ligt, despite the fact that his start at Juventus was a bit slow. I think his second and third season at Juventus were perfectly fine. It just feels like a no-brainer. My one concern is that why haven't any other clubs been linked with him? But it feels like
I think PSG
if reports. Okay, so PSG seems like the other obvious one. Liverpool would be another club who I think should be looking at a defender in his of his profile. But it feels like if De Ligt really does want to join Man United, then maybe that's why it's United have been so heavily linked. If United do want to sign another centre back, then I just would suggest going for someone with 1 year left on their deal, someone who's going to come super cheap, who's like at a decent age. It just feels like spending over £100 million on two centre backs just isn't viable for United this year. So like Olivier Bashagli at PSV, coming off an amazing season, left-footed as well. So if you did want a ball-playing centre-back to be back up to Lissandro, I think he'd be a really good shout. Only 1 year left on his deal. Inter are looking at him, which I think says a lot. I think they probably have him, potentially as a backup to Bastoni or a long-term replacement for him on the left side of that back three. Maxence Lacroix at Wolfsburg has recently been confirmed that he's not going to sign a new deal, so he's available.
He was being linked quite hard with Palace actually. A couple of months ago.
He would again probably potentially a decent Gehi replacement at Palace. So although does he play? Actually, he plays more on the right actually. But nevertheless, there's a limited market out there in terms of centre backs, but I think United need to be smart in that sense.
But
and
we do love Branthwaite, don't we?
I love Branthwaite. I love Branthwaite. I think I put him in my team of this year. So I think around November, December time, I put him on my team of the year so far. He's brilliant, but it's just like you do have to pay a lot of money for young English players in positions where which are in demand. Like and Branthwaite is that. Like if the market was like not as ridiculous as it is, you would say that Branthwaite is probably 50 million tops. But because of that premium that you have to pay, it's 70 million. And Everton clearly at this moment in time don't feel like they have to sell him. So it feels like bad timing in that sense, and it doesn't look like any other top clubs are necessarily going for him particularly hard. You could potentially see City going in for him at some point. There has been talk about that a little bit, but I feel like where Premier League clubs are right now, it just doesn't, where the top clubs are at least, it just doesn't feel like anyone's going to spend that kind of money on a centre back this summer.
Yeah, while we're on the topic of young English players, I'm going to bring mine to the table, and this is a player I think is absolutely fantastic. Really, really blown up this season and should have got more minutes at the Euros. But I'm going to say I don't understand the Anthony Gordon to Liverpool transfer. I understood it at the base level with PSR's issues and Newcastle. Newcastle had to offload an asset. The Minter deal had fallen through. It looked like Elliot Anderson was going to fall through. They needed sort of 50 to 60 million pounds with a shortfall. We're going to have to sell one of the stars. Is it Isaac or is it Gordon? You probably end up erring towards Gordon because Isaac is the superstar face of that side.
And they got Harvey Barnes.
And Liverpool were looking to capitalise on that opportunity as well, weren't they? Anthony Gordon is, of course, a Liverpool fan, boyhood Liverpool fan, so he was probably quite interested in that move. But now that that's done and the links to a level still persist, I don't totally understand it. Like, if there's one area I feel like Liverpool are stacked right now, it's probably in that left wing slot. You look at how Arne Slot wants to play his football. They are quite high, wide wingers, and it feels like Luis Diaz is maybe a natural fit out there. And if he's not, you've got, Darwin Núñez who can play out there, or a name that I think might be used out there quite heavily is Cody Gakpo, who has had great Euros playing out there in a similar sort of system at times. Maybe that's the real home of Cody Gakpo, rather than being as a number 9 or being that 10, playing out wide, having a little bit more room to run at players like we saw at PSV. I think potentially he'll get utilised out there. So if you've got Gakpo, you've got Diaz, you've got Darwin Núñez who can be a backup out there as well. Where does Anthony Gordon fit into that idea? I think he would probably cost close to £100 million now if you were really asking out of Newcastle. There's no reason for Newcastle to sell. They've sorted the PSR issues. They've managed to offload Anderson. They've managed to offload Minter. They've managed to get the deal done for Dan Ashworth. They don't have PSR issues. He's probably one of the 2 star faces of the attack alongside Alexander Isak. why would they sell? They have no reason to sell. He's
Yeah.
on a long-term contract. I think even at £70 million, it would be a confused deal, really, unless Luis Diaz was sold to maybe PSG or Barcelona. We've seen those links, haven't we, in recent seasons? His dad's kind of talked up playing for Barcelona at times. I just don't quite get it. I think he's a fantastic player, big goal output last season again, and part of his kind of charm is the fact that he is an absolute dog off the ball, isn't he? He's a press leader, works so hard, he's so fluent, but I think Liverpool have more pressing issues than spending 70 to 100 million pounds on Anthony Gordon.
He also would be their most conventional left winger. That's why I guess I see like why Liverpool potentially be interested in that. He is a very conventional left winger and offers something different to all of those players that you mentioned there, like Darwin Núñez. Luis Diaz is more conventional, but obviously likes to cut in. And Cody Gakpo and Núñez are very much unconventional
Darwin
wingers.
Núñez and Anthony Gordon profile quite similar, though, don't they?
Do they though? I don't know.
I think they're quite direct. I think if you put Luis Diaz in that Newcastle system, he would work quite similarly to Anthony Gordon.
I don't know. I feel like Gordon is far more comfortable hugging the wing than Núñez is. I feel like Núñez is always trying to kind of make a beeline for the penalty box. But nevertheless, was the Kwanzaa kind of getting Kwanzaa involved in the deal? Was that
Newcastle's
was that put forward before the PSR cut-off?
So that was pre-PSR cut-off. That was Newcastle's idea. Yeah.
So the fact that both Newcastle were willing to do that, to me, suggests that maybe Gordon isn't quite as important to them as one of their especially compared to Isak. But the fact that Liverpool are unwilling to do that suggests that. Yeah, are they really prioritising someone in that area, or was this just coming from Newcastle? So
it was probably a market opportunity, wasn't it, for them? If Anthony Gordon's available,
you can see
£50
why there are
million,
loads
you'd
more.
suddenly go, here we go.
There are a load more talented left wingers about than talented strikers of Alexander Isak's quality. Like I think Gordon is so much more easy to replace than Isak. But I'm with Joe. I just don't think it's their deepest position by far. I think they've got so much quality in that position. It would have felt quite random.
Yeah. The volume, like the amount of money involved, just doesn't make sense.
Crazy.
What you got to do? Next one.
I've got a one that is one to keep an eye on actually as the summer kind of progresses. It's James McAtee to Chelsea. Now this sounds kind of crazy, but it's actually being reported by a very reliable transfer journalist at the Daily Mail, Jack. I never know how to pronounce his surname. Gorn.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is saying that Chelsea and a number of Premier League clubs are interested in James McAtee. Look, he's going to stay at City and he's going to go on their US tour. It feels like City tend to give quite long breaks to players after Euros in particular. City went deep in multiple competitions last season. So he's going to go on that US tour, similar to what Cole Palmer did last summer, and then potentially move. It feels like it's a little bit tied into what happens with Bernardo Silva potentially. His long-term future is a little bit uncertain. Would City want to let another very talented youngster go to Chelsea? That's up for debate as well. I just think it'd be a risk from Chelsea's perspective because, yes, he did play really well in the Championship the year before last for Sheffield United. And then last summer, which I didn't actually quite realise or had forgotten about, Leicester City really wanted him, who, of course, were managed by Enzo Maresca at the time on loan. He then chose to go back to Sheffield United. I think it was 3 goals, 3 assists in a terrible Premier League side. I'm not really judging him too much. I think he showed moments of real quality, actually, but it was a really difficult season. I think he's a very talented player as well, but he was playing for a side that finished with 16 points. It was an absolute shambles. So I'm not really judging him on that. It's just, do Chelsea need to spend? I think he'd only be £25 million, maybe £30 million max. But do they need him when they've got an abundance of right wingers already in Madueke, Palmer, Sterling, and then playing more centrally as well? And Nkunku's now back. Palmer's can play there, of course.
They've got Esteval and Kennedy players arriving as well.
They just bought Dewsbury Hall. It just doesn't feel like they need James McAtee whatsoever. And yes, he looks like he's talented, but at the moment, his numbers aren't really popping to suggest that he's ready to play for a top 6 club at the moment, which Chelsea aim to be next season. I think he was about 0.3 expected goals and assists per 90. For a pretty poor Sheffield United side, that's not a disaster by any means, but just a random move that I'd hold off if I was Chelsea for now, because they just don't have the need. It does feel like, as much as I like the Dewsbury Hall deal, it wouldn't have been my priority this summer. I know you can only judge a window at the end of it and see where else they put their sort of chips, as it were, but for me, it's striker and goalkeeper if I was a Chelsea supporter right now. Even the Calafiori deal, which I was going to talk about, felt quite random
I
for Chelsea.
think we should talk about the Calafiori deal because I even think the Arsenal move is a bit bizarre. I really don't understand it from a Chelsea perspective. I totally agree with you. Like, Chelsea fans are saying we want to use him as a left back, this inverted left back in this Maresca system. Fine. Hasn't really operated there consistently for Bologna. You've also got 2 established left backs and just sold Maatsen, so it doesn't feel like Chilwell or Correa are going to leave the club given that Maatsen's left. And then you've got Badiashile and Colwell, who are both left-footed centre backs. So you know Enzo's going to play a back 4 for sure. Where is the space for Calafiori?
Just wouldn't be my priority.
I don't get it.
Wouldn't be my
and
priority.
I think it's a similar point for Arsenal. Yeah. Like, you look at the shape of Arsenal's back 4. Fine, it feels like they are missing a left-footed option, doesn't it, on the left-hand side behind Gabriel. If Gabriel was to get injured, it feels like there's a hole there. But at 50 million euros with Jurrien Timber to come back basically as a new signing, Jurrien Timber, Kivior, Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, all available to fill that left-back slot. You've then got Gabriel Saliba, you've got Ben White as well as a right-back option. I feel like just give those minutes to Timber. Like, Timber's that talented, and he was brought in to such a high acclaim to play in that left-back slot. That's how they were starting the season before the injury. Let's not forget, it was without Gabriel, wasn't it, at the start of the season? Like, just play Timber.
Yeah. I think the thing, well, at least the response I've seen from Arsenal fans, because I was a little bit confused about it as well, I think it makes slightly more sense for Arsenal because basically what they're saying is Zinchenko, I think, is a decent chance of leaving, and Jakub Kivior as well. So there'll be 2 left-back options down for bringing in Calafiori.
That makes sense. If they leave, if they both leave.
Then it makes a little bit more sense. But it wouldn't be my priority for Arsenal either. I still don't really understand why they're not prioritising, like, a right winger backup. You know, one Arsenal fan responded to me on Twitter yesterday and said that Arteta thinks that Saka, and actually said it publicly, which I missed, so I'm not sure whether this is 100% accurate, should be playing 60 games a season. I think that's really concerning for your best player. Like, you need to be protecting him. They need
central
to get
midfielder as well, man.
Central midfielder as well, because Jorginho's future, you know, he's not going to be around forever. Is Declan Rice? They still need to work out whether he's a 6 or an 8, but it does feel like they need another midfielder there. The long term, is Kai Havertz the long term solution at centre forward? It just wouldn't be my priority signing another defender. So I think it makes a little bit more sense for Arsenal, but I wouldn't be totally on board with it.
Are you going to say avoid for Calafiori at Chelsea?
It's
a good thumbnail, mate. It's a good thumbnail. So decide.
Happy to.
Okay.
Yeah. Chelsea fans come at me once again.
He is also very good looking, isn't he? So we'll get on with that. Although that's another debate that was had in the group chat this week. Doogie's not so convinced.
Me and Zach, I think he's good looking. I just don't think he's as good looking as people are making out.
No.
He's handsome.
Yeah, those cheekbones.
Someone did make the point that it might be me just being jealous because he's got magnificent hair.
Yeah.
Which could be a subconscious factor.
Yeah, to be fair, and also that we are, like, football has been missing, like, real kind of stallions in recent years. Italian stallions, yeah, has been missing that recently. Speaking of stallions, not so much of a stallion, but long-haired guy, Adrian Rabiot to Liverpool.
What's this, man?
This was come
what's
up
this?
like, I don't really get it. Still a lot of chat about this over the last few days, and again, we're talking about, like, places where Liverpool are stacked. Liverpool are so stacked in central midfield, and yes, I know they're not stacked necessarily with superstars there, but Adrian Rabiot it feels like the kind of profile of midfielder that Liverpool just have in abundance already. Like, years ago, when he was playing alongside Verratti at PSG, you could make the argument that he was like an option at number 6. Like, his time at Juventus has proved that that is not his best position, and that shouldn't be where he plays. He is such a box crasher, and when you look at that Liverpool midfield, you've got Alexis McAllister, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, even Grant Gravenberch, slightly different, in terms of his all-round play. Like, he can be a little bit moulded into a defensive, into a kind of defensive position, and of course McAllister played as a 6 last year. But really, like, the natural, McAllister, Jones, and Elliott, especially McAllister and Jones, who I've kind of compared him to mainly, are all action central midfielders who can kind of do a bit of everything. And that's the thing. Like, if Rabiot, was clearly, much better than them in any kind of element of his game, then I could kind of see it. But, like, he's not a better passer, he's not a better ball carrier, he's not a better ball progressor, he's not a better defender than either of those two. You could probably say the same when comparing him with someone like Gravenberch. He's not an out and out defensive midfielder. He's not particularly young anymore.
He's on massive
Yes,
wages.
he's on big wage. Well, I think he's on pretty big wages. He would be available for free, or he is available for free. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like a very Michael Edwards signing whatsoever. It doesn't seem like a Liverpool signing, and does have a little bit of history of being a little bit unsettled and causing coaches some problems as well. It just doesn't feel like
Mother Rabiot comes too.
Does not feel like the kind of player that Arne Slot needs at all. Like Liverpool have to prioritise a number 6 this summer. Like, it's so imperative that they prioritise a number 6, because I think if Arne Slot really wants to make an impact in 1 or 2 years at Liverpool, that midfield needs to be completed, and every other element of it has been. Like, I think Curtis Jones is going to come on strides next season. I think Harvey Elliott as well. I think Harvey Elliott's going to potentially have a massive season next year. McAllister, I think it's Szoboszlai as well. And this is the thing, right? The one thing that Rabiot does stand out in terms of his time at Juve is his goal and assist output. Like, it has been really, really good. Like, he's been one of Juventus's best players over the last 2 years. I'm not even sure if Allegri would have lasted as long in the job in his second stint had Rabiot not put in the performances that he did, and
particularly the season before last.
And I think and also you credit Allegri obviously for using him in that way, but like, Rabiot really applied himself and became such a key player for them. But it's Szoboszlai is the guy who you're relying on for goals and assists from midfield in this Liverpool system, and even then, because the attack is so stacked and has been for so long, like, we just don't associate Liverpool as a team which relies on its central midfielders for goals and assists, and maybe that will change under Arne Slot. But yeah, he's got so many options there. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me in a system which is probably going to be a double pivot next year. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't think Liverpool should be targeting a player even similar to Rabiot.
Yeah, I agree. I do think Rabiot would be a good pickup for a number of teams though in the Premier League. Like, I do think because of his free transfer, he's definitely the best free transfer available on the market. And I know that he has had problems off the field, and the profile, I agree, doesn't fit Liverpool. It definitely doesn't fit Michael Edwards' piece of recruitment. But there's a lot of clubs that could do worse than Adrian Rabiot on a free this summer, honestly. If he was a couple of years younger, I think I could really imagine Manchester United moving for him.
Well, United were looking at him every last couple of years.
Yeah. Talking to midfielders though, the transfer I'm going to say to avoid next is Weston McKennie to Tottenham. Which is still lingering around, despite the fact that Archie Gray has joined for £40 million, which is a transfer I think is absolutely stunning by everybody involved. Whoever managed to get that deal done, just hat tip. This is such a good move, especially with Joe Roda moving in the opposite direction for 10 million. Like, feels like a £30 million deal all in, really. It's just
everyone loves a hijack as well. Great hijack. It's
absolutely magnificent. Just so good. He's, I think to a level maybe being misprofiled a little bit, Archie Gray, in that people I'm seeing online in sort of Tottenham lineups of like Archie Gray as this sort of 6. He's going to sit in front of the back 4. Don't necessarily think that's
fans say he's an 8.
Really where
you want him to have a bit more freedom for sure.
Hopefully he can play right back.
Don't think he's going to be like the defensive midfielder that some Tottenham fans are like putting their hat on. Like, as a ball shifter, he's just so much more entertaining and being able to travel through the lines. And like you said, last season pretty much operated exclusively at right back because of his ability in tight spaces and things. So I think with him joining, also the return of Bergvall, who spent last season out on loan, and we are talking about a talent that many people inside of football talk about as being a superstar in the future. With the return of him and the other options that Tottenham still have on their books, if we run through Bissouma, Pat Mateta-Sart, James Maddison, now Archie Gray, Bergvall, Højbjerg, Bentancur, Lo Celso,
and big old Ollie Skip.
Like, yes, they've got rid of Tango and Ndombele. It feels like Lo Celso's got a year left on his contract, so maybe he will be moved on.
I think Højbjerg will leave
Ollie
as well.
Skip probably will stay, and Højbjerg might well move on. I think he's got a year left in his contract. But even then, you've got probably 5 or 6 central midfielders in there. Where does Weston McKennie fit? Like, I just don't see it at all. I especially don't see it in a Ange system that's hyper mobile in midfield. Pat Mateta-Sar's pressing everywhere, pushing up. Bissouma is trying his best to cover in front of that back line. Although I think there's potentially question marks there a little bit in that sixth position. Weston McKennie's not a six to replace an upgrade on Basuma. I don't see him being a better option than Pat Mateta. I don't see him being played where James Maddison is, and I think that's probably the reason Bergval's come back and probably going to be involved to some level. So where does he fit? Like, where does he fit?
I wouldn't say he's an immobile midfielder though. Like, I think if you put him in, I think he would. If you're going to sign him, he's just a pure squad player. Like I think
they don't need any more squad players, man.
Probably
probably not a starter in that midfield, and
probably
I don't see what McKennie brings that Bentancur doesn't bring to the team.
Yeah, like no, I agree. I guess like the only way I could see the thinking behind it is that he is just a player who I think if you had Ange, if Ange was to bring him on for like the last 30 minutes, like he is quite good at just doing a job that the manager tells you to do.
Højbjerg.
But then there's a lot of talk about Højbjerg potentially leaving as well, and I think Højbjerg, especially if Dortmund come in for him and they basically offer him a starting spot, I think Højbjerg would push for that move.
But is that not where Archie Gray's going to come in and play?
But I just
they spent £40 million on Archie Gray. I don't believe that Archie Gray is going to come in as this sort of 5 starts next season. I think he's going to play significant minutes, Archie Gray.
20 games maybe.
Yeah,
I think he'll be trusted.
Yeah, no. Again, I just don't see McKennie coming in as a starter if he was.
No, I agree.
Like I just don't think he's a bad option for a squad. For a squad of players who, are really gunning for Champions League football.
But they
next
just don't
season.
need another squad player in there, man. Like Ollie Skip's going to be there, a squad player. Bentancur's probably not a starter. Archie Gray again not a starter. Bergval probably not a starter. There's 4 midfield options there behind Mateta Sarr, Basuma, and James Maddison. They're also potentially looking to recruit Eberechi Eze or Desiree Doué, who can kind of float in either as a left winger, in the case of Desiree Doué a little bit more.
Yeah.
But Eze can also play as a 10.
It's a slightly strange one, I think. So soon after signing Maddison. That's why I'd be
I quite
surprised.
like the Eze signing.
Do you?
Yeah.
I just don't think I'd go for a more natural winger, I think, than
I think the reason that Eze works for Tottenham is that he's not going to put out more than 25 starts. Like, he doesn't. Like, in the Premier League, I think there's minutes to be had there, and Eze can play with Madders as a left winger who can drift in, or he can play instead of Madders if Maddison's injured. Eze also has his own injury problems, and I just think when teams start to sit back against Tottenham, which is what was happening quite substantially towards the back end of the season under Ange, in that lower block, and Tottenham were really struggling to break down that lower block, that is where Eze is at his absolute best, when teams are sat a little bit deeper and he can operate in and around the edge of the box, and he can get shots off from the edge of the box in a similar sort of vein to Maddison. And if you had those two in your side against low blocks, it's really, really hard to stop.
I just use that money because it's going to be £70 million, I would have thought, at least.
I think he's got a £60 million release clause.
Okay, well, that is a slight change. But to be fair, I'd use that money still on an elite number 9. And I do think there's a few about.
Is there, though? Is there? At £60 million, who is available?
You could have a go at Victor Gyökeres. You could have a go at Santiago Jimenez, who I think's got a big future as well. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to consider the market.
There's a dearth in the 9 market. There's a big dearth in the 9 market of that level of talent. That's a massive step up on Richarlison.
But there's also, but it's not. I also feel like number 9s aren't necessarily being priced out of the market in the way they were, say, last year. Like Jonathan David's, like big links to Chelsea. I don't think Chelsea are going to play.
Is Jonathan David a step up on Richarlison?
Well, Richarlison. I mean, in some ways, yeah, because he's put up, double-figure numbers season on season for the last 3 years. Like Richarlison's never done that in his career, on a consistent basis. I just don't. Sadly, I think Spurs just need another number 9. Like,
I agree.
It doesn't matter whether it. I don't think it has to be an elite level number 9, because they just don't really exist out there anyway. Like, you could say that for any club who's after a number 9, right? I think Spurs just need someone who can come in and can offer Ange something.
I think
as well as
would have
goal.
been such a good fit for that Tottenham side. His ability to drop into that pocket and play with runners in behind him, which is classically really what Kane and Son made that partnership so good, with Kane being able to drop in, Son running off him. Kulusevski got a lot of power because of that as well. It's really what Xerxes excels at, when he drops into those sort of half spaces and he can pick up the ball, turn, beat a man, and then play. Yeah. Because I've seen people sort of misprofiling him as this is because he's 6'4", as this sort of penalty box guy.
Yeah.
He's really like a false 9 and number 10.
Not.
So I think Xerxes would have been an amazing option for Tottenham.
Artem Dovbyk at Girona as well. I'm surprised that more clubs haven't been linked with him. Coming off top scorer season in La Liga. I just think, and also like physically, like he looks so good, and he is more of a penalty box approacher. He is more of just a bully there, and does kind of require a really well-oiled system around him and cutbacks and everything. But that's the kind of that is the kind of team that Tottenham are aiming to be in the long term, and we saw that from them last season. Like, I don't think Tottenham need to have a world-class number 9 in there. I think there are options out there, but maybe Girona won't sell. I'm not sure.
Who's your next one, Dukes?
This one's a bit crazy, but it has been talked about in the Spanish press that PSG are going to try and make a world record bid for Lamine Yamal.
Not happening.
Come on.
I mean, it's not happening, but also it shouldn't happen as well. They did supposedly offer, I think, £169 million in March, which was flat out rejected. Jean Laporta's basically said, supposedly, that pretty much everyone's for sale except for there's a few untouchables, one of which is Gavi, one of which is definitely Lamine Yamal. Makes perfect sense. It's obvious why they are going, or why PSG are interested in signing him, at least in terms of the profile that can get them back on track after this huge departure of Kylian Mbappe. Xavi Simons is going to go out on loan almost definitely as well. Like that project is kind of really teetering. But last year, obviously, Lamine Yamal, 7 goals, 10 assists. He's been exceptional in the Euros, of course. By the time that you've watched this, he might have had a crucial say in Spain, potentially getting to a semi-final against Germany.
Do you think he's the best 16-year-old you've ever seen play football?
Easily.
Yeah, I was saying this the other day. Genuinely, Messi wasn't doing this at 16.
I was too young to remember Rooney.
But Rooney broke onto the scene at 16, but it was
Everton. Yeah, I think Euro 2004 was when he was 18. Though.
Yeah, that's the thing. If Rooney had broken onto the scene at under Arsene Wenger at Arsenal at 16, maybe we would have seen, but and that's not to say that Lamine Yamal's broken through at Barcelona side in fair transition, but still, it's the stage that he's broken out on, isn't it?
I had a look at his Euro stats.
But also, it's just his overall stats for Barcelona last year were he profiles like a 27-year-old winger at his peak. It's insane.
Pre-Germany, he's averaging 3.7 shots per 90 in the Euros, 3.7 key passes, and 3.7 dribbles per 90.
Yeah, it's crazy.
In the Euros, supposedly against the best. Best in Europe.
But also his when you look at his volume of shots and then his XG and his shot accuracy, and also his expected assists across last season, his end product is just so consistent as well.
I've seen him have a bad game. I don't think I've seen him have a bad game. And I think they managed him quite effectively as well, because most of his minutes really, or at least most of his serious minutes, came in the back half of last year. I wouldn't leave Barcelona anytime soon if I was Lamine Yamal, especially for a PSG project that already has Ousmane Dembele playing your position, that already has Marco Asensio. This is just, I think it's paper talk, to be totally honest, because even PSG aren't stupid enough to drop this amount of money on a 16-year-old. If I was Lamine Yamal, I wouldn't be leaving my comfort zone. I'd stay in the La Masia Barcelona comfort blanket, as it were, who are managing your development quite effectively, I think. Although we'll see what happens next year when he is the superstar, the complete superstar of that team. So this isn't happening, and it's one that he should avoid. It's one that PSG should avoid. And Barcelona, I wouldn't, £200 million. You probably should accept that if you're Barcelona, but it'd just be such a shame.
Great for the thumbnail though, mate. Great for the thumbnail.
Yeah,
always thinking the thumbnail.
Yeah, nice. My final one feels like a bit of a no-brainer. I don't know, unless Gary Neville's got something really special up his sleeve. Artem Melo to Wolves. Not feeling it at all. I think we can probably all agree on it. It feels a little bit harsh on Artur because he is coming off probably the best season of his career. I think he said it himself. He feels like he's in the best shape of his career. That loan move to Fiorentina did him wonders. I think he made 23 league starts, which is the most he's ever done in Europe. Since signing for Barcelona, back in 2018 was it 2019? And I think he played over 40 games in all comps for Fiorentina, obviously making the Conference League final. But, you look back on that Liverpool year where he didn't play a single Premier League minute. I saw someone saying that, Taylor Swift's made more Anfield appearances than Artem Melo, which is pretty damning. And he also has quite big wages. I think, Fiorentina, I think if they could afford it, probably would have paid the €20 million option to buy on him because he was brilliant last year. But his wages, at least when I was looking up, seemed to be around the kind of £100,000 a week mark. A hangover from the kind of Barcelona Juve deal with Pjanic. I think he is 27, 28. Maybe he is 28.
He's had a strange career,
still
man.
got a couple of years left on his contract, so he'd probably cost around the 15 to 20 million euro mark. And I kind of see it because Fiorentina were the second highest pressers in Serie A last year. Wolves, have transitioned into a more of a pressing system under Gary O'Neill, but it's just the physical side of things. Like, and when you look at his profile, like, the only thing he still pops in is just like recycling possession, pass accuracy, and pass volume is the only thing that he really pops in. His progressive passing numbers are decent, but his defensive numbers have never been particularly good. And when you compare that to Gary O'Neill's Wolves last year, I think he would rank around 7th in the squad. Like, for a central midfielder in that system, that's just not good enough. You look at João Gomez, who was making 5 tackles and interceptions last year, where there were games in which, like, him and Lamine as a midfield pairing just looked completely unbreachable.
So physical.
You bring in Artemelo into that. It's just like, where does he really fit? I think he has to be as part of a double pivot in a 4-2-3-1 or as part of a midfield 3. Like, I just don't think you have the luxury to utilise a player like that in Gary O'Neill's system, personally, unless he feels like he wants to change shape. Everton and Newcastle also interested, apparently. I kind of see it a little bit more with Newcastle, just because I think there's a little bit more room to breathe in that Newcastle system. But that Wolves team was so good last year because they were, every element of that team was so physical, and there were so many runners all of the time. Arthur just doesn't seem to. I'm just not sure where he fits there.
Yeah, I agree. My final one is actually going to be goalkeeper. I think is had a struggle last season, and it's James Trafford to Newcastle. Now this rumour is still hanging around, and I just don't quite get it. With Pickford on the books, with Nick Pope on the books, still coming back from that injury. Dubravka hasn't left yet. They've just signed Ogiachemis, however you pronounce his name, from Forest. They've also brought John Ruddy in as that sort of third backup goalkeeper. So there's 4 goalkeepers on the books, one of which is Nick Pope, who's going to be your first choice when he's back fit. Very trusted by Eddie Howe. Where does Trafford fit into that 4? Even if Dubravka leaves and goes to Celtic, which is the rumour, does he come in as the 4th goalkeeper?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Do a year in the Championship, man.
I don't really understand that. It sounds like Artur Muric is going to leave Burnley as well, so kind of does open up the slot for James Trafford there. Didn't have a good season at all last year at Burnley, man. Like, by post-shot expected goals, I think he let in 6 more than he should have. He was ranked 33 out of 40 goalkeepers that have played or started over 10 games in the Premier League. I think he struggled a little bit. I think Burnley looked a lot more solid when Muric came into the net. And I agree with you. Go and have a season in the Championship. Find your feet again in a system that works for you, because I don't think he'd be that cheap for Newcastle either. This was an expensive signing for Burnley. £20 million plus player. He's very young and has come off the back of a struggling season in a team that's going to a team that's already got 4 goalkeepers on the books when Dubravka hasn't yet left. Where do the minutes come? At 21 years old, unless that Nick Pope injury is like really bad and they've kind of we've not thought about that. I just don't understand this. I'm sure now that they've signed the Forest goalkeeper, this move will kind of fizzle out, I reckon.
He's also never played in the Championship because he went from League One to the Premier League. And, you look at the same thing happened with Gavin Bazunu when he was at Southampton. Like, there's nothing wrong with just, you're a young goalkeeper. Go and have a year in the Championship. Burnley will be one of the better teams. I don't think the Scott Parker appointment's particularly inspiring, but I think they will still be up there for automatic or playoff promotion. So, I just go be number 1
I've seen
there.
links with Bayern as well. Which is probably
with James Trafford.
Which is probably because company's gone there, but either way, just stay at Burnley.
I had one final one
Start
about Bayern,
there,
actually. They are being linked with Ademola Lookman at the moment. He's also been linked to Juventus. Look, I really like Ademola Lookman. He's rebuilt his career after a few difficult sort of loan spells. Probably should have been picked up by a Premier League club when he went to Atalanta, and he has been excellent there. He's at 0.6 goals and assists per 90 over the last 2 seasons. Obviously, that phenomenal hat-trick in the Europa League final helped the sort of evolution away from the Luis Muriel, Duvan Zapata days. But I don't think he makes sense for Bayern. They've got Harry Kane. He does his best work now centrally. They've got Matthias Tell, who they've got such high hopes for in the future. And I don't think he's a better winger than Sani, Nabre, Coman. They've also
Elise.
got Brian Zaragoza. They've just bought Michael Elise. Like
Xavi Simons going there.
Xavi Simons potentially going on loan there. I don't think it works for Bayern. I think he'd make more sense for Juventus. But even they are probably going to evolve to a 4-3-3 next year. And is he going to get a spot on one of those wings?
I think just stay at Atalanta.
Yeah.
Like so many players have built great careers there. Why he's only 2 years in there. Like I just stay in one place. Like
Champions League football
he
next
tried so hard at so many clubs and had so little luck for the first kind of 5-6 years of his career. Like you've got a home where you're like absolutely adored. You're playing under a brilliant manager. You've just won silverware. Like
Gasperini trusts him, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
He's the man.
stick with him. All right, so that was our sort of 9 players or transfers that should be avoided in our opinion. Let us know which transfers you think should be avoided in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. We'll see you later. Bye bye.